What's up YouTube? We're a couple of cunts who are in the countryside. We're talking about literature. I'm quite a reader. I do enjoy reading. I can get through a few pages in a night. How about you? Are you a big reader?
It would surprise people. I am. Most people would think coming to me to talk about literature would be akin to going to talk to Joseph Fritzl about parenting advice, but no, I am quite a reader myself. And I think it was maybe the 4th or 5th Harry Potter book when that came out. I literally had nothing to do. My mum went into town to buy it. Came back to the house by, 10 o'clock. By the time we'd had dinner that evening, I'd read the whole thing.
I think you can tell when a book really grips you and you burn through it. Like the first Hunger Games book, I got through in about 3 days. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I got through that in about a week. And I mean, A Song of Ice and Fire, you've seen how fucking beefy those books are.
Oh, you could break into a car with those.
I was just looking back and I read them in 2 months. That's 7 paperbacks, each of about 600-700 pages at the least. So, you know, and then there's things like the second 2 Hunger Games books, which maybe took me about 3 months total to read because they were shit.
I remember reading Lord of the Rings and stuff. Yeah, the first one I was working at a plastic grinding factory, and literally I had to pick up a massive heavy bit of plastic, put it in the grinder, wait for 2 minutes and get out, and I literally sat there for about a week just putting plastic in. You'd read about 4 pages, you'd have to get up, you'd have to put another bit in, and just read the entire first Lord of the Rings book like that. So I associate the first Lord of the Rings book with grinding plastic.
Well, that can't be a very pleasant association. Every time you watch Lord of the Rings, you just start like having a Vietnam flashback, just fall to the ground, shake, and just go, I can smell plastic. The thing that surprised me was when someone got you Sun Tzu's The Art of War for Christmas.
That was our cameraman. Very, very nice edition as well. It kind of red, nice hardcover with like gold lettering on it.
I know you like things that are red and hard. Have you read it?
I have, yes. It's quite interesting to see the perspective of an ancient Chinese guy stabbing people, or giving you techniques on how to stab the most number of people
always
an hour.
An opinion you want.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the more important things he likes. It's like, how am I going to get to work today? I don't know, I'll ask some Chinese guy what's the best way about stabbing people, and you know, go from there. It is somewhat of a deeper book than that. It's not just, you know, including stabbing people, but you know, you get the general idea.
So the best way is just to line a few people up and have quite a long sword.
Yeah.
I'm not really a non-fiction fan. I've not really read that many non-fiction books.
See, I'm the complete opposite. I do read a bit of fiction these days, but the vast majority of the stuff I'm getting through at the minute is non-fiction, just because I find it interesting.
The other month I finished reading George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, and that's really not a world you'd ever want to go into.
A lot of winter, a lot of swords,
a lot of rape and incest and paedophilia.
Yeah, there is a worrying amount of that shit going on there.
I mean, there's also like several quite slamming hot chicks, and you know, it's. I'm really glad that when they adapted A Song of Ice and Fire into the epic TV show Game of Thrones showing now on Sky Atlantic, they fudged a lot of the ages. Basically, everyone in the series is 3 years older than they are in the books.
Because I know the girl is like 13.
That's it.
Yeah.
You watch the series and you go, oh, Daenerys, she's a bit of alright. Then you go and read the books and it's like, she's 13 in the books. And then you start to wonder about yourself. I mean, obviously she's not 13 in the show, but even so, it's a horrible connection that you just kind of make. And we're not all like our cameraman who's comfortable with that shit. It's gonna come as no surprise to anyone to learn that my favourite author is Stephen King.
You do. I think you've got all of his books?
I have. I own everything he's ever written. I've read everything he's ever written, and to some extent or another, I have enjoyed everything. He did a book under his Richard Bachman name called The Regulators, which was not the greatest, and also the novel Dolores Claiborne was a bit dull, but it ties into another book called Gerald's Game, which I would recommend to absolutely everyone. It's pretty vile, it's kind of hard to read, it covers a lot of very dark subjects, and there's some scenes
kind of like an evening with Neil then.
It's kind of like an evening with both of you, one at each end.
I was really tempted to troll you then in the middle of that, but I just go, Dan Brown, Dan Brown, Dan Brown, just to see how angry I can make you, but I won't.
Going from someone like Stephen King to some cunt like Dan Brown, and you know, you've got to wonder just how many penises he sucked to get a publishing deal.
Yeah, but you got to think how many people are
18.
sucking his dick now. 18 exactly, wow.
I mean, the thing is, the episode is on literature, we're getting into shit-literature now.
Okay,
we're going to bring in fucking Stephanie Meyer and
No, let's not
Dean
do that again.
Koontz.
I've never read any Dean Koontz.
Don't.
I won't read it for him.
Might as well call him Dean Kuntz.
Very close to the film, which is odd. Chuck Palahniuk.
Yes.
Fight Club. Very, very close to the film, which is odd considering the amount they ripped some books up.
Yeah.
Like Starship Troopers. Not the book and the film. Very, very different.
Absolutely.
But no, that book I really loved. Very short, but very good.
That's the thing with Palahniuk. His stories are blunt, they're disturbing, but very, very insightful. They really make you think. A couple of books that, you know, are not as well known as Fight Club, because obviously the film adaptation really helped that out. There's Choke, which has also been adapted, which is a fantastic, fantastic film and book. Survivor is my favourite of his. There's also Invisible Monsters and Lullaby. And Haunted is a collection of short stories. Now, you've probably heard of one of the short stories, and that's called Guts. And it's basically got a real reputation for being sort of like Two Girls, One Cup, the story.
Nice.
It's one of those things that's really hard to read, and people sort of have literally like thrown up, and when he was doing readings, people were passing out in the theatre. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to tell you what the story is. Go out there, experience it for yourself.
There's a book I know you're a fan of as well, which I found in Nottingham. A is for Armageddon. But basically it lists all the different possible methods the world could end. So asteroid strike, you know, a plague that makes zombies,
Super volcano.
super volcano, world hunger, you know, massive tsunami, something like that. All of these really weird and wonderful things, and like how likely
wonderful
all
in
this
the
other
sense
stuff.
that it's not, you know, wow,
Well, you know,
that's great.
a
But
spectacularly interesting natural phenomenon, or in some cases man-made phenomenon. Not wonderful as in, hey, look, everyone's dead. Although, in some days, I do kind of feel like, oh, you know what we could really do with a good asteroid strike today.
that's one of those books I class alongside The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks, which is just a fantastic read. The Alphabet of Manliness, which is...
I haven't read that in fucking Maddox, wasn't it?
That's right. We were in Waterstones not long ago, and I was having a look at the sort of sale section, and I saw something called The History of the World According to Facebook. I was like, that might be a laugh.
I've read that.
And it's basically, if Facebook had existed from the beginning of time, you know, what would the status updates be? It's everything from like, the first entry is the singularity, and its comment is first, and then it goes on to, you know, God, dinosaurs, all the historical figures, all the way up to Satan greeting Osama bin Laden in hell. It's a really funny book, and I mean, I know a lot of people are sort of like, oh, you know, Facebook's taken over the world and everything, but it's actually, it's pretty insightful, and if you're on Facebook, it's a good laugh.
I think one of my favourite ones, there's a couple in there, like especially new ones. The one, as you mentioned about Osama bin Laden, there's one where Osama's like, oh, just having a night in, it's like SEAL Team 10 likes this. Another one I quite like was Abraham Lincoln, sort of like, oh, going to the pictures tonight with the old lady, and John Wilkes Booth. Like, there's just little things like that, just sort of like, yeah.
Or like, what was it? It was like Ringo Starr is now friends with John Lennon and Paul McCartney and George Harrison. Girls like this. We should probably talk at least a little bit about the classics of literature before we finish this episode. We've got this far. We haven't mentioned Dickens or the Bronte sisters. We haven't mentioned
one of my favourites,
Joseph Conrad.
Mines of King Solomon, Alan Quatermain. Love that character.
I know he's a hero of yours. We haven't mentioned, you know, Don Quixote. We haven't mentioned Milton's Paradise Lost. We're really, you know, this is an episode about literature, and all we've talked about is modern pop culture and, you know, humour books. We need to get a bit more intellectual up in this. What I think this calls for...
Oh, a scientific experiment.
I think an experiment or some sort of study would be good. Now, what we might do is think of 5 of the most renowned, most debated, and more importantly, largest books ever published.
Yeah, here we go.
We can talk about, you know, how great they are, what they've influenced. We can talk about how difficult it is to get through them. Or we could see how painful it would be for me to clobber you round the face with them.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was what we were
going to do.
That's
all
probably, to be honest with you, doing a full in-depth review isn't really going to happen on YouTube like this, so I think just hitting me around the head with them is probably going to be the best idea.
Good man. Up first then is
Tolstoy's
War and Peace, which
Absolute
is
classic.
obviously a great work of literature. 994 pages.
Just before we begin, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to rate them out of 10 as we go, or would you like me to give you a running order when we get to the end?
Yeah, give me a pain rating out of 10, I think.
Out of 10, okay.
So, War and Peace then.
I'm going to give that a 6.
6? That's alright, but kind of disappointing.
try harder.
Tolstoy. Okay, next up, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged.
Not read that one.
No, it's a bit less well known than War and Peace. But
It looks a
it's
bit
still,
bigger.
Yeah, it's pretty hefty. This one clocks in at just over 1,168 pages, so
we
it's
got
slightly bigger.
Good 150 on the last one.
So there we go. Let's see if that affects the pain rating.
6.5.
6.5. So, at the shrug, more painful than War and Peace. You've learned something from this episode, and I think that's important. Next is something I'm obviously going to be about The Stand, you see. King's longest and best received novel. This is 1,421 pages.
Oh wow, even bigger one.
So,
it is slightly shorter and fatter though.
It's,
so we're
it's
gonna have to
quite
see
the
how
brick, this. So
this is going to be interesting. I'm glad I've been drinking. 7 for that one.
7.
Definite 7. We're going up.
King's in the lead.
Maybe it's the cumulative effect of all of them.
Next up,
classic.
Lord of the Rings. Okay, it's all 3 books, 50th edition. This is a very nice book. And
why are you hitting me with it?
For the lols, obviously.
Cami print on it.
Obviously loved by all.
He's 1,200 this one.
1,178 pages for this. So here we are, all the force of an evil of Mordor in this.
Ready? Gonna give that the same as last one. Gonna give it a 7.
7. Okay, so King and Tolkien. Quite excited about this next one. It's kind of a cheat because it's not a single book. The complete works of Shakespeare. Everything the Bard wrote. This
Or
clocks
didn't write in some cases.
at a whopping 1,433 pages.
It's a decent looking size book. It's got the sort of like width to depth ratio quite good.
It feels quite heavy. So
yeah, I think that might have the most weight out of them. We'll have to see. This might be, last one might be the winner here.
good feeling about this.
Might be in the delivery of a hand swipe there, but I'm going to give that a 7.5 out of 10.
7.5 out of 10. Billy Shakespeare's the winner. We've been a couple of cunts in the countryside. If you enjoyed this video, you can like, favourite, subscribe, share, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you didn't like it, just wait for the paperback. Feel free to suggest a topic for us to talk about in a future episode. We'll see you next time.
To be or not to be? A cunt. That's the question.